I think if people have started to unfold and realize what is going on that's making them feel stuck, then they can just start to decide, okay, well, what are some things that I want to do to attend to this? How do I attend to my emotion internally? And how do I attend to this issue that I'm facing or this stuck feeling externally?
Hey there, beautiful soul. Welcome to Cultivate Your Joyful Life, where we believe true fulfillment blooms from within. I'm Emily Liu, your certified life coach, and I'm on a mission to help you create a life you freaking love. In a world where we constantly juggle priorities from career to parenting, relationships to health, it's easy to feel overwhelmed or not enough. But don't worry, in this corner of the universe, I'm here to share practical tips and inspiration to help you access your inner joy right now. So, grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's cultivate your joyful life together. Here we go. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. Today, I wanted to talk about a question I get quite a bit in my DMs, which is, what do I do when I hate my job, but I can't quit? And this could be applied to anything. What do you do when you're not in a perfect situation, a perfect environment, a perfect relationship, and things just don't feel fully complete? There's something that feels unsettling or unsettled. And what can you do about the situation? Essentially is what I'm hearing. And in order to answer this question, I've invited one of my fellow Happily Hired Formula coaches, Megan Meyer, on to riff with me, just answering this question that so many people can relate to, because life isn't perfect. Life very rarely feels like it's complete. Even when we achieve our biggest goals, something usually goes haywire shortly thereafter, because that's what life is about. Just a lot of ups and downs, highs and lows. And yeah, if you just don't feel 100% settled or complete, or like life is perfect, everything is perfect, I'm in the perfect relationship, house, job, body, whatever it is, then you're not alone. And I know you're going to love this episode. But before we dive in, I also want to just share some exciting news with you. So this week on May 24, we are launching the Happily Hired Formula, the last time we're launching this program this year. So if you're really interested in getting job search support, as you're listening to this, you're like, maybe I do have options to change my situation, then you're going to love our Happily Hired Formula program. It is our most popular 6-month group coaching program where myself and Megan, whom you'll hear from, and 3 or 4 other coaches, I can't remember at this point because we've been growing so much, are basically guiding you step by step through everything and anything that happens in the job search process. So in the Happily Hired Formula, you're making sure that you have a resilient mindset and you're getting ongoing support, customization, and accountability, because we have weekly group coaching calls. We have life coaches, we have career coaches, we have career transition experts with HR backgrounds that are just helping you navigate through any and every question that comes up. We also have an incredible community, and I mean incredible people join our program of just very growth-minded, growth-oriented, ambitious, high-achieving professionals that just know that they don't want to settle in their careers, that there's something better out there. And a lot of times we have people who join our program because they have been laid off, or they voluntarily resign, or they're currently in a job and they're realizing it's not the right fit any longer. I've outgrown this place, I've outgrown this role, and I want to look for something more intentional, more aligned, more fulfilling, more joyful. And it's time for me to make a pivot. But pivoting is scary. If you're looking for a new 9-to-5 this year and you want to make it the year that you finally make that change happen, then be sure to stick around to the end of this episode as I'll share more details. Or you can take a look at the show notes and check out our link to learn more about the Happily Hired Formula. And finally, one last update. Anyone who's looking for specifically career clarity, like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what titles exist for me. How do I figure out which role to go for? Look, I get it. There's over 12,000 titles that exist, and you're a multi-talented, multi-passionate person that is probably wondering, okay, can somebody just tell me what to do? Well, if that's you, I'm so happy to share that this Wednesday, May 22nd, I'm hosting a brand new live 2-day workshop on career clarity. This is a workshop, not a training where you're just going to sit there and learn. I'm actually going to walk you through step by step of a 1-page blueprint to identify who you are, what your gifts are, what your purpose on this planet is, and how to find the roles and the environments and the titles that are a great match for you. Because it's never too late to career pivot. It's never too late to join a new company, a new industry, a new environment, a new role. I believe that we're all here on this planet with a very special gift and personality, and no two people are identical and the same. And the more you recognize what your gifts are, the more you can show up and find the right opportunities that are aligned for you. So if you want to learn more about that before we kick off on Wednesday, May 22nd, be sure to go to www.cultivate.com/clarity workshop, and I'll link that in the show notes as well. Okay, let's get into today's episode. I am going to introduce you to Megan Myers. Megan is a licensed therapist based in Asheville, North Carolina, with a passion for guiding individuals to clarity, particularly in their careers. With a focus on trauma processing, anxiety reduction, and confidence building, she helps clients improve their sense of self and relationship. Megan's expertise is in dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and EMDR, supporting mindfulness, emotional regulation, and effective trauma processing. Prior to founding Envision Balance Counseling and Consulting, Megan gained experience in both a dialectical behavioral therapy center and in corporate human resources. I hope you enjoy this episode, especially if you're feeling stuck right now, because we're going to go over how to feel unstuck, what to do when you lose your mojo and how to build it back. We're going to touch on parts of us and how to work through emotions when you're feeling stuck, and how to make a crappy situation more tolerable. We're also going to cover what the perfect trap is and what a better rubric is, along with what a shit sandwich is. All right, without further ado, here we go. All right, Megan, welcome to the show.
So good to be here, Emily. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited because I think a lot of people in my community know about you already, since you're kind of heading up the Happily Hired formula and you're doing the group coaching calls and so forth. But I knew that when I got this question, what do I do if I hate my job but I can't quit? I was like, I want to loop Megan into this so we can just talk out what to do. Maybe it's not even just the job specifically, but anytime you feel like you're stuck in a rut and there's no options in front of you, like, what can you do? So, where do we start with this?
That's such a good question. So I feel like so many people feel that way, and whether it be in career or in life. And so I hope that whatever we talk about can be applicable for both, for people. I feel like we have to figure out why people are stuck. Like, what's going on? What do you think?
Yeah, and I think stuck too isn't really an emotion. I feel like that's a state of being, but sometimes getting clear on like the emotion helps you get clear on like what is driving that emotion, versus like feeling so in the hole that you can't look up and see the possibilities or the ladder that's like, 10 feet in front of you. So maybe we just unpack it, because I think you ask a really good question, which is, are you really stuck, or do you just think you're stuck? I'd love to hear like how that shows up for you and your clients or anyone who's really feeling this stuckness.
So I think understanding the difference between facts and emotions are a big piece. And I'll often ask my clients to elaborate and share more about the emotion that they're feeling so that we can figure out, is this a thought that I'm having? Am I having the thought that I'm stuck? or am I actually stuck? So that's differentiating the two. And then if we can figure out, okay, well, this is an emotion. I'm feeling stuck because I don't like my manager. I'm feeling stuck because I'm tired of the same tasks that I'm doing every day. That is a feeling, but it's not a fact. It doesn't mean that they, can never leave that job and they're chained there. It means that, they need to explore those feelings and understand where they're coming from so that they can better act on them. So that's the first step that I usually tell people to take.
I really like that. Separating facts from emotions. And you would actually label stuck as an emotion?
I would say there's a deeper emotion underneath that. So I think stuck is kind of what's happening on the outside, and what's happening on the inside is probably fear, frustration, anger, feeling like a lack of autonomy. So breaking that down into smaller pieces or understanding the layers in that feels important too.
Yeah, like the word that came to me was apathetic. And I know there's like a lot of different ranges of emotions, but I often say like when you feel stuck, you've lost your mojo and therefore you kind of feel indifferent or apathetic to it all. But to me, like when you lose your mojo, it's like you've just lost the possibilities around you. Like you don't see the possibilities around you or inside you anymore. So I almost feel like equate stuck to like losing your mojo, which means losing the possibilities around you or in you. So maybe we can start with that and really talk about like if somebody's feeling that way, how do they start to look for more possibilities in themselves or around themselves?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And connecting with your mojo and your sense of self and this thing that makes you you. I feel like when people do start to lose that, they do start to feel stuck. And I think of that relating so much to feeling a lack of autonomy. And when we feel stuck and it might even be a perceived lack of autonomy. Like it's not actually that we lack autonomy. We could still leave this job. We could still get out of this tough situation in our life. Would it be hard? Definitely. And I don't want to minimize that fact. But I think that when people perceive that they don't have autonomy, they start to feel this lack of sense of self, kind of lack of confidence. They draw inward like you're talking about and kind of lose that mojo. I'm going to use that word all the time. Mojo.
Yes, let's bring some Austin Powers energy into this.
I love it.
Yeah. So for anyone who is feeling that loss of mojo, that's like, what would you advise them to start if they're like in this really deep, apathetic, like frustrated, hopeless state right now, no matter if it's in their career or just their general life?
I think where I always start with my clients is processing that emotion. Because if we jump forward and we start to get into like, what are you going to do next? How are you going to get out of this? And it doesn't attend to maybe everything going on in there, in our bodies and our minds and our spirit. And so I really just want to sit with that emotion first with clients and understand like, how are you feeling? Where is this coming from? What does this connect to in your past and other times where you might have felt the same feeling, the stuck feeling? And what's coming up for you? And if we can understand that and unpack that a little bit, then we can kind of figure out how to attend to that emotion and support that emotion. So that's always the first place that I start.
I really enjoy that because I know, personally speaking, and I'm sure you get this a lot too, like so many clients, when they feel stuck, they're just looking for that Band-Aid solution or like, just write my resume, just get me more interviews. And they don't allow themselves to sit there and feel those feelings. And I'm actually just curious what your thoughts around that is of why they want to bypass the feelings, because I have some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I actually have a metaphor for this, and I call it the tennis ball metaphor because I think a lot of people, sitting with vulnerable emotion brings up discomfort. Brene Brown talks about it. Everybody talks about it in therapy. I think coaches talk about it. It's tough. It's tough work to sit with that vulnerable emotion. And so I think naturally, kind of subconsciously, a lot of times, we try to jump out of it and we try to find a way to move past it without having to go into it. And I think of like a tennis ball. When you bounce a tennis ball off the ground, when you hit that vulnerable emotion on the ground, the instant reaction is to want to bounce back and to go away from it. And so it almost is counterintuitive to stay in that emotion. But a lot of times that's where the real work is done. That's where we better understand ourselves.
Beautiful. We're going to dig into that. I want to put a pin in that. But to me, I feel like what I've seen in my clients is they don't want to sit in their negative emotions because one, maybe they got like the story growing up of like, you know, man up, or like, you're making such a big deal out of this. Stop being so sensitive. And so they're really like shamed when they want to feel the feelings, that they just stuff it and they suppress it. And then I think the second that I've seen a lot is like the whole manifestation world of you got to think and feel positive thoughts and be happy all the time, because otherwise you're going to attract negative emotions and negative things into your life, because like attracts like. And if you're going to be like sad and angry and frustrated, then you're just going to like find more things that are sad and frustrated and angry. But the opposite is actually true. Like if we just stuff and suppress that and we don't allow ourselves to like ride out those emotions and like the wave of those emotions, then we just continue like finding it because it's all subconscious and it's all in our bodies still, versus like healthily releasing it without any shame, without any guilt, without any judgment, so that we can create the space to then hold and attract more positive and welcoming things into our lives that we actually want to attract.
Yeah, I think the messages that people get around emotion, you're so right. The messages people get oftentimes also makes it hard to go into those spaces.
Yeah. And I like what you said too, which is like, it is uncomfortable sometimes, or like the discomfort of sitting there and like really processing the grief and the sadness and all that feeling of, I don't know, a lot can come up. So for anyone who hasn't allowed themselves to go there, I know as like a therapist and as a coach, we hold that safe space, but like if somebody's doing that on their own, but they find resistance to it, what would you want to tell them or support them with? And getting there
would be to create a space. And it's funny we say safe space, but literally create a safe space in their house. Blankets, you know, have a cup of tea, create the space where you feel comfortable kind of going into that. That would be one thing. I think the second thing is maybe even setting a time limit on it for the first time. So saying, I'm going to go into this, I'm going to journal about this for an hour, but then I'm going to call up a friend and go hang out with that friend because I know that I'm going to need that afterward. Or I guess the third thing would be that comes to mind. I feel like there's so many other things, but it's just imagining going into kind of the surface of it. And like you're imagining a lake and you're diving halfway into the lake. And you say, this time I'm going to dive halfway into the lake. Next time I'll dive all the way to the bottom of the lake. But this time I'm just diving halfway in. I'm going to see how it feels in there. And then I'll come back up and I'll revisit this and go deeper next time that I go into this.
I really like that you can break it into like multiple sessions. It's not like you have to have like a sob fest for like 24 hours, but like really just allowing what's arising for you and giving that the space and or making a future date with it. Like it's not appropriate for me to express this anger right now or this sadness right now, but I'm going to go do that at 9 p.m. when I'm by myself. And I love that environment of just a safe nook or space in your home where you can do it. I'm curious what your safe space is, where you just feel like you can be yourself and feel all the feelings.
I would say maybe, my living room or backyard, because it's so cozy and I love being in nature to do that kind of thing.
Oh, I love that. For me, it's probably my office at this stage because it's the only place where my kids can't crawl on me or in the bathroom or I go into my closet quite often.
Yeah.
Just for like a minute of sanity.
A lot of my clients are like, I had a good cry in the shower this morning. And I'm like, awesome, cool. How was that?
I love it. Okay, so the very first step in all this, if you're feeling like you're stuck in a rut, you have mojo loss, you can't see possibilities in front of you or within you, is to actually process your emotions. Like really get reflective, take a step back. Don't go find that like shiny object that you think is going to solve the problem. Don't look externally outside of you, but really assess what's really happening internally, so that you can start to connect some dots of like, where is it really stemming from? And then what's the next step?
So next step would be, I think it varies person to person, but kind of deciding, okay, based on what I've learned from attending to these emotions, how do I want to address these emotions? And I think that could be, if somebody's understanding, okay, well, once I dug into this sadness and this grief that I have around work, I realized that I'm feeling stuck because, my manager reminds me of, has like a triggering aspect that reminds me of my childhood or something like that. So maybe they've made that connection at that point. And I think if people have started to unfold and realize what is going on that's making them feel stuck, then they can just start to decide, okay, well, what are some things that I want to do to attend to this? How do I attend to my emotion internally? And how do I attend to this issue that I'm facing or this stuck feeling externally?
Yeah, I like that example because I think so many people automatically jump to, well, I just have to find a new job or I have to find a new environment. But often what they realize is it's just a pattern. Like same issues are arising, even though the person has changed. Like, what is the constant? Is like, oh, okay, there's like something inside of me that keeps coming up as a pattern that I need to like really sit with and work on so I can break the pattern.
Absolutely. I think I brought that example up of the boss because I think the answer, like you said, isn't necessarily changing jobs. It's how do I need to address this kind of hurt within myself, this wound, and heal this wound so I'm less triggered around this manager? Or how do I reframe my thoughts when I'm around this person? How do I want to communicate effectively with this person in a way that, is respectful both to me and to the other person?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so much of what triggers us is a growth opportunity and it's showing up so that we can do something differently. And I think when we do what we can do and like we've really communicated those boundaries or communicated our needs or learned how to self-regulate and self-soothe, and if that problem still continues to persist, I think it's a really great thing that we always have options in the sense of we are autonomous beings that can do what we want and need. And that includes finding another opportunity if that time truly comes. So I want to go back to this person who wrote, I can't quit. I want to like dig into that because I feel like there's a lot of limitations there. And I'm just curious, like what you would want to know about why they can't quit.
Okay. So first, kind of going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I would want to understand, is can't a fact or is can't a thought? So, it might very well be a fact. And I would respect that if, someone's like, I'm, in a situation where I've got a sick parent, I have to stay at this job because I'm taking care of them at the same time. And I'm, I have to be in this certain area and I just don't have the mental energy to change a job right now. So I think that feels more like a fact to me of like, okay, there's external factors that are out of your control that are causing you to have to stay at this job. If someone's saying, I can't because I think it'll be really hard or no one makes a career change at my age, then I'm like, oh, okay, well now we're unpacking some limiting beliefs here. And that's not a fact. Those are emotions underneath there.
Yeah. I really like the capital T truth versus like what's true to you. Cause I think so many of us, we state things with such like conviction and such power. Like this is the truth. But like you said, I think sometimes we look at the lens through our viewpoint and vantage point where it seems so true. And it's like this belief that sounds so objective and like capital T truth, but it's often something that just limits us. And there's, again, the loss of seeing the possibilities. I think the place to start here is really just getting curious. Like, why do you not think this is possible?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How much investigation have you seen about like what kind of jobs exist in your area? Because I've actually had people like that too, where they said like, I live in a really rural area. There's like no jobs here. There's no companies here. But I'm like, oh, but what you do is like 100% remote. Like you can work remote. Like, have you considered that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like you said, there's sometimes options beyond what we can see at the moment. And it takes some like digging in and doing some intentional research around it.
Yeah. But to your point, I think fear holds so many people back and makes like your truth seem like the truth because you just don't want to face like what is going to be required if you do have to make a move. Or like, you know, we work with career transitioners. Career transitioning is really hard. Like there's so much involved from like having to figure out how you align to a job to then convincing another person you can do the job. But I think that fear like often holds people from even taking the first step. So I'm just curious if somebody's feeling like they are letting fear in the driver's seat, what would you want them to do or what would you like to say to them?
I would want to understand where that part's coming from. Like, what are the feelings and the thoughts behind that fear? What is that part longing for that it's not getting? So kind of, I almost imagine having a conversation with the fear and exploring like, what are those deeper things going on? A lot of times too, like, you know, there's so many layers, like we talked about, to emotion. So fear is one layer, but there's always deeper layers to it. So understanding some of those deeper layers.
I love how you just talked about parts. Like you didn't make the fear to be like you or like your whole being, but just an aspect of you or a part of you. Can you dive into that a little bit more? Because I think a lot of people here aren't familiar with parts work or like the different parts of us. Although I think they are familiar in the sense where like if they're making a decision, people are so used to saying like, there's a part of me that wants this, but another part of me wants that. So I think they know, but I love how you just called the fear a part. So can you just elaborate and give context to what you mean by that?
Yeah. So I guess parts work is showing up in coaching, it's showing up in therapy. And it's a way to better understand ourselves and to feel more holistic. We're not only, happy. We're not only sad. There's all these different parts of us that are feeling different things, that have different wishes and desires. And I think generally it helps destigmatize emotion. So I just wanted to pull up this quote. That's why I'm looking over here it's about parts work. And it says, there are no bad parts of ourselves, just parts that need to be reintegrated, understood, and loved. And so that's just that saying that what that means is that these parts all have needs. And if we can understand their deeper needs, we can then address those needs and help attend to those parts of ourselves. But the part of ourselves that's angry or the part of ourselves that's fearful isn't a bad part. That part's just needing or wanting something.
I love that. Was that a Richard Schwartz quote?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So anybody who doesn't know, he's kind of like the founder, the inventor, I don't know what you would call him, but
yeah,
he's like the leader of parts work, and he really discovered it through his deep work. And I actually was listening to an interview with him, and I love the way that it was described. Basically, like, you have a huge dining table, and at the head of the table is your higher self, like the part of you that is curious, that is non-judgmental, that is just filled with infinite love and acceptance and wisdom. And at the table are all the different parts of you, like your inner critic, your fear, the part of you that is shy, the part of you that is outgoing, like all of these different parts are at the table. But like you said, there's no bad parts. Like they all just want to come forth and be seen and understood. And it's so important to know like where these parts were created from, because oftentimes they were formed when they were needed to protect us from something. And so I just love that you introduced that here, because you're right. Like so many of us feel fearful or anxious, especially when, again, we've lost our mojo. There's a part of us that feels stuck. Like, okay, what is that about? And that's what I'm really hearing through this conversation with you is like, there's just a deep curiosity of really understanding, okay, no judgments. Let's not like shame this or like judge this, but just like get curious around like what's really here. How do we just dig into it a little bit deeper to understand its intention and what it wants? And then that way we can see how to move forth. But there's always a way to move forth in the process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Sitting with that emotion is just the first step. And then attending to its needs is what comes next.
Beautiful. Okay. So for the person that is in their job that they just absolutely can't tolerate any longer, but they also feel like making that switch out is taking a long time, or I don't even know if it's possible because again, I live in this city in Idaho, this little town that's like population 20 and nobody has a hiring wanted. Yeah. Okay. I'm in the mountains seeking adventure, but I need a job because I need income. Okay. So for that person, like while they're still going through this, what feels like the worst job on the planet, like, I'm just curious what your tips and advice would be for them to start shifting out of that state of being, and or like, how do they make it more tolerable? I guess is the question.
Yeah, that's such a tricky thing. And so I think part of that involves balancing all of these different emotions and acknowledging them. So I wouldn't want to tell someone, okay, like, you can never be frustrated at work again. Like go to work and just be happy every day even if you don't like this job. So I'm not going to say that. I think it's okay to acknowledge that frustration. But if someone's getting carried away and kind of pulled into like the depths of that, then yeah, maybe you're sitting a little bit too heavily in it. And so the thing that comes to mind for me is when we feel really frustrated or really anxious, a lot of times we're sitting in between this pinnacle of acceptance and change. And so I imagine this balance beam, and on one side is acceptance and on the other side is change. And if we know which side we're going to lean into, that starts to reduce our anxiety. So if we're leaning into change, we're like, okay, I'm definitely making a change. Like I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm feeling less anxious. Or if they're like, I have radically accepted that I'm going to be here, then we feel less anxious, essentially because we've made a decision. And so part of what I'm hearing in this person is that they have not accepted that they are going to be here for a little while. Internally, maybe they kind of cognitively know it, but there's this part of them, again, a part of them, but there's a part of them that is really fighting that's really frustrated by that. And they haven't fully brought acceptance in to say, okay, I'm here now. I'm going to be here for the next couple months. How do I really want to handle this? How do I want to look at this? So there's, I think, a better understanding the part that's fighting that and being curious about whether or not they could bring some acceptance into that.
What's coming up for me as you say that is that makes complete sense, because I think that limbo state of uncertainty, of like unpredictability, is what drives us to feel so anxious, and we can't really feel settled in one state or the other, like you mentioned. And I don't know if I ever shared with you, but I've been house hunting for the past 3 years. So I moved back during the pandemic from LA to Phoenix, and at the time I was thinking, okay, it's 2020. There's a worldwide recession, pandemic, the great resignation. There's going to be a housing crash. Like the market has got to crash. And so at the time I didn't buy a house because I was just waiting for the prices to drop. But what happened in Phoenix was the complete opposite. Like everybody got remote work and they started flooding over here because they were like, oh, like it's so affordable. And the prices doubled during this time. And then I was like, okay, the interest rates are starting to climb. That means the house prices are going to go down. But like the supply and demand was just so out of whack that not only did the interest rates go up, but the housing prices went up too. So anyways, long story short is I've been house hunting for the past 3 years, and I've been like in my current house, which I'm grateful for, but we've outgrown it in terms of size because I also had 2 kids during the pandemic. And there's just like a lot of things about it that I don't love. Like it's 2-story versus single story. Like the kitchen is small. Like there's no like mud room. So everything gets piled up onto our dining room. Like there's just so much that I want to change about it. And during this past 3 years, I felt like I'm in that in-between state. Like I haven't fully accepted the situation. So like even now in my office, I'm like, oh, I really want to like put up like textured wallpaper, but I might move soon because I've been house hunting this entire time. I think about house searching, like it equates to job searching, but I'm like, oh, wait, if I like put up a wallpaper now, then I'm just gonna have to remove it later. And that's going to be more hassle. So I haven't like fully accepted it. And then on the other hand, like you said, the change, right? Like I'm making a change. I know I want to make a change, but I haven't like fully made it because we've been just like getting all of our offers rejected, and it's so frustrating. But like, yeah, I feel that like I haven't fully accepted it and I haven't fully changed it. So I'm just in this like limbo state where I feel like I have one foot in both worlds. I just want to be like, I want to put both feet here so I could be like fully accepting, or both feet here. Like I'm absolutely moving, and no matter what the prices are, but I'm like trying to find the best of both worlds right now.
Yeah. It's tough having one foot in one place and one foot in the other. And like the job market the housing market, it's wild. And like a part of me just wants to bring this, I don't know, validation to that. And so I just want to say like acceptance doesn't mean, oh, I love this. Oh, I'm so happy about this. It means I'm radically accepting reality and my feelings are still valid. And so I think it's okay, just using your example, it's, okay to say, I wish I could have a house right now and I'm a little frustrated and I'm radically leaning into living in this space right now and bringing gratitude to living in this space. But my feelings are still valid.
Yeah, that's actually where I moved into in 2022. Like in 2022, I was like, okay, I'm definitely not moving into a new house because like the market is just so crazy. So I actually started to change like, okay, if I'm just going to accept that I'm going to live here for another year, like what would I appreciate about it? And I started to like appreciate I love that I have these wooden floors. I love that the kids have a space to play in the backyard. And then I moved into like, how can I just improve this while I'm still in it? So I got new furniture. I rearranged some stuff, and I don't know, it kind of felt like a new house for a while. And I was like, oh, I really love like what I've been able to do with this space. And I love what it's giving to me. And I think I like felt that like true peace for about a year. And then I think like I'm still like, I'm not fully accepted of like, this is my end all be all. So there's parts of me that are like, I really want to decorate and I really want to make a place feel permanent. So now, thank you, Megan, because I'm going to put 2 feet into making a change because I've been in like the acceptance, and now I'm just like, okay, let me just commit to making a housing purchase this year. And it feels good saying that because like the fearful part of me is like, oh, but like, what if the market tanks again? But I'm like, I just kind of have to trust that if I make a change, it's all going to work out. Thank you for coaching me just now.
Oh, I feel like you're always coaching me too. So I'm glad we can do it mutually. I feel like, yeah, with that situation in particular too, even just, saying I'm going to make this change, that feels so important because, then it's like, okay, this is what I'm working towards. I've made the decision. It might not happen right away, but I know that I will get there.
Yeah.
And part of it is kind of this bringing in some self-trust too around that. But I loved all the examples you gave in that because I feel like they were so applicable to that person, the job situation too. Of like, okay, I'm going to redecorate. That could be applicable to like, if someone's at work kind of deciding, well, I'm going to explore, are there any other things?
Put a plant on my office.
Yeah, decorate in my office. It could be, even shifting their role a little bit. Like, can I jump on this other project that sounds really interesting just to make my role a little more interesting? So it's like those small kind of tweaks that people could make to better their environment or better their situation.
Oh, absolutely. I really love what you just shared there at the end too about like committing to a choice. Like it just feels so empowering to say like, okay, I'm committed to staying here for the next 6 months, or I'm committed to finding another opportunity that's more aligned. Like, but even just saying it, like without even having to like put any actions right away or like having a plan, it's like just the feeling of saying like, I'm committing to this and I have a vision and I'm holding that truth, like that to me opens up so many possibilities, like just energetically of like, okay, now that I've like doubled down on this, or like I'm committing to this, or I'm choosing this path, now I get to like open up myself and open up the possibilities that are going to put me towards this one direction. And the analogy that you just gave about like having one foot in one place or the other place, it does make you feel stuck. Like you're kind of in quicksand. Like you want to leave, but you're like stuck here. So I think having 2 feet in one bucket is just so incredibly powerful.
I hear like you saying too, like kind of opening yourself up emotionally to whatever it is, like really leaning into it. I love that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So the other question I have, or it's not really a question, it's more of a statement, but I kind of want to remind people that nothing is perfect. Like even like the perfect house, like clearly I've been house hunting for 3 years because I'm holding on to like this perfect thing that checks all the boxes. I think a lot of people feel that way about dream jobs as well. And I know I use dream job and so many career coaches talk about dream jobs like in the marketing because, it's like, it's less desirable to say like a job you can tolerate, but like, I want to talk about that for a bit because I think so much of us are taught this like message that you have to like live this super aspirational life or like the Instagram life where everything is perfect. And I think that keeps us from like really appreciating and also leveling with like what's realistic. So I want to like just get your thoughts on like what a perfect job or a perfect life or perfect situation or perfect relationship, like perfect fill in the blank is defined as.
I do feel like that's a trap, like a thinking trap, a perfect trap. And if we get caught up in it, especially those of us who love setting goals, and I'm totally guilty of that. Like, I think it can be a strength, but it can also be something where I'm like, oh, got to improve that, got to make that better. That's not quite good enough. So I think it can be a strength in setting goals, but it can also show up in a way of like constantly being critical of things or being hard on myself if I'm falling into the perfect trap with like the work I'm creating or different things that I'm doing. So I always shift back when I am able to catch myself in that mindset, because I don't always catch myself, I try to shift back to a place of looking at my life in alignment with my values, as opposed to looking at it like, oh, this has to be perfect. So just thinking about, well, how does this align with my values? How can I make it align with my values a little bit more? And are there things where places where it is aligning with my values, whether it be work, personal life, that sort of thing. So it's actually a framework for a type of therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy, where people, they're basically, the thought process behind it is, if you're constantly setting goals, you're not present and enjoying the present. So it's possible to set goals and, be intentional about those goals, but also come back and enjoy the present and appreciate the present. And the way that we can do that is by really leaning into our values and noticing like how we're living in alignment with our values.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that framework, because I'm guilty of that. Or I'm going to say the retired version of me is guilty of that. Like, they said, I heard somewhere, like, I forget the percentages exactly, but like most people live 50% of their time in the past. Like they're always thinking about shoulda, coulda, woulda, or like regrets. And then like there's people who live like 90% in the future, where like they're just constantly thinking about the next thing, and like only 10% in the present. And that's me. Like, or that was the retired version of me. Like I was constantly like thinking about like, what's next? Even when I hit a milestone, like a huge milestone, I'd be like, okay, cool. I'm like, now what can I do? Versus like just being really present and like relishing and savoring and embracing like that present moment. So I don't know if there's like a percentage that you would think is ideal, like based on your values of like how much percentage of your time you should spend allocating between the present, past, and future.
Ooh, I've never thought about that before, but that's such a good thought. I feel like for me, sometimes percentages are helpful, but a lot of times lately, and I haven't always been good about this, but I'm trying to be better about it. Coming back to my body is really what tells me whether or not it's a good alignment. So like if I feel like this tension out in my chest, if I feel tight, if I'm like having trouble falling asleep, like I'm probably living too much in the future because I'm putting too much pressure on myself and putting too much like energy around my goals. But if I feel grounded, if I generally throughout the day feel like I'm able to tap into that kind of grounded sense, if my jaw isn't tight and my shoulders aren't tight, then I feel like there's a better balance between like how I'm thinking about my goals and whether or not I'm being present, like living in the present. And that's my key indicator now. It used to be more of like a percentage, but now it's like how I'm showing up in my body.
Ooh, I'm going to steal that. Yeah, because in my head, I was thinking like, oh, it'd be good to be like, I don't know, 20% in the past, like 30% in the future, and then 50% in the present. But your body doesn't lie. And I completely agree. Like sometimes the future worrying is a lot of like anxiety and just like feeling unsettled, because it's like, oh, I have to think about that or the next thing. And then the past, sometimes for some people, it could be like filled with grief and sadness with, like maybe it's a loss of something or someone. And it's just a lot of regrets that they're replaying in their mind, and their body is feeling that. So what would present, I mean, I know from like a meditation standpoint, like presence is like really grounded, really calm, really steady. But like, how would you describe some of the sensations you feel when you're fully present?
I think I'm thinking out loud about this. It would be with the world around me. So like as I'm driving, I'm not like, oh, I just arrived. How did I get here? I don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, the trees are beautiful today. Like I'm noticing kind of things that I'm passing. I'm really in tune with what's going around me in my space. I think if I'm in the present too, I'm just kind of noticing how I'm feeling. A lot of times I have a lot more gratitude when I'm in the present and appreciation for the
Yeah.
moment, if I can bring myself back to that. Those are a few things that come to
Yeah.
mind, but I feel like I have to sit on that question more because I've never put it into words.
Yeah. Well, I love that example you gave of like you're just noticing things around you versus being on autopilot. Because you're right. Like sometimes I drive to my destination and I'm like, that's really frightening that I got here because I don't even remember
Totally.
making that turn or that turn. But, if you've been going down on path for so long, your subconscious is just kind of like, okay, I got this. But that goes back to so much of what this person asked. Like, what do I do if I hate my job, but I can't quit or I don't think I can quit? I think a lot of it is like subconscious programming and patterning and just like pattern interrupting could be so helpful to be like, okay, well, what's really true here? Like, can we just investigate this lovingly and get curious? So yeah, I really love like the analogy that you just shared there.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
I was also going to add really quick that to me, like, I feel the perfect job or the perfect spouse or the perfect relationship or the perfect house. To me in life, like so much of it is trade-offs. And I think this really does go back to knowing your values and your non-negotiables. Like what are you willing to tolerate and what are you not willing to tolerate, or what's like everything has a pro and con, but what's more important to you? So like the example is Elizabeth Gilbert has the concept of a shit sandwich. And it's like, no matter what you look at, like 80% of it is going to be like amazing. Like that's kind of the core and that's what you want. But on the top and the bottom is going to be like a crusty sandwich. Like the bread is going to be the 10% and the 10% of shit. And this is the shit sandwich that you just have to eat. So which shit sandwich are you going to eat? So like the example would be if you want to live in New York, hopefully the 80% is you live in a place that's really vibrant and has a lot of culture and like you're surrounded with people that you love. But maybe like the 10% on top and the bottom is like you have high rent. You have to deal with public transportation if that's not your thing. So like everything is kind of a trade-off. And that just goes back to like, I don't think like if you hate your job right now, I just hope you're not looking at it as like, I'm looking for the dream job or like the job that checks all the boxes and is like perfect day in and day out. I just don't think that exists. But I think what does exist is being able to know how to navigate the tricky situations, the lesser than the ideal, and knowing that you have possibilities and options in front of you and that you're in control and empowered to make that change or adjust and respond to make it work for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Everything doesn't look like an Instagram reel. And I think when we get caught up in that desire or wish, we do start to aspire for this thing that's not really realistic, like you said.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for being on the show. And I am just so excited that people get to hear from you and hear your philosophy and your wisdom. I love personally that you have that counseling and like really strong therapy background with all the different modalities that you can support people with. But you also have a really powerful coaching background to really support people and make sure that they're seen and heard and can work towards their goals.
Oh, well, thanks, Emily. You help remind me of that. So
awesome. And final question I ask everyone is, what would you say to cultivate more joy in your life?
Oh, I love that question. I think part of me just comes back to a little bit of what we were talking about, being really present and noticing. It sounds a little cheesy, but like noticing the little moments around you that you're appreciative for and that align with your values. So like taking the time to really sink into those moments, both like in mind and body.
So simple, yet so challenging at times, but really sound
Absolutely.
advice. And final question is, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so if anybody wants to connect, they can find me on LinkedIn, Megan Myers, or they can look up my counseling business, Envision Balance Counseling and Consulting.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Emily.
I hope you enjoyed the episode and you loved Megan. I absolutely adore her. The reason why I actually asked her to be a happily hired formula coach is because she solution messaged me. If you're not familiar with solution messages, it's one of my strategies that I believe ensure your visibility so that you can be considered. Because in a job search, if no one knows you exist, they can't give you a job. And Megan Myers actually solution messaged me, reached out to me completely blind. I was so impressed with her communication skills. And essentially we hopped on a phone and I realized how aligned we were in terms of our values. And she had just done so much prep work of making sure that she had a very positive impression and told me what she was able to do. So with that being said, I really believe in walking the talk, and it's so important to find someone who can guide you through the process because they've been through it themselves. And as a job seeker, as a former recruiter, as now a therapist and a career coach, I just love everything that she's able to share in terms of her own knowledge, but with so much compassion and mindfulness and grace and thoughtfulness and intention. So hopefully you saw that from her as well. And she can't wait to support you inside of the Happily Hired Formula if you decide to join us. I want to share a little bit more about the program because I believe the Happily Hired Formula is one of the only programs out there that truly focus on a holistic mindset level along with job search strategies. So we're not here to just tell you what to do and give you all the templates and the trainings. Yes, we do that. But more importantly, we want to know, what are you struggling with? What are your biggest challenges? What are your fears? What's holding you back? Why do you feel stuck? What's your relationship to overthinking and people pleasing and perfectionism and imposter syndrome and inner critic? Because to me, that's actually what is holding you back from landing that dream opportunity. All of our coaches are really here to guide you step by step, week by week through whatever it is that's coming up for you. In our LinkedIn community, Megan is monitoring it every day, and I hop in there as well, along with our incredible community who's just here to champion, encourage, and deliver sound advice to make sure that you're not left wondering, what do I do? Or feeling stuck in your career, feeling far removed from career happiness. Because I'm going to tell you, it exists. Again, not a dream job, not a perfect job, but a job that you can tolerate at least 80% of the time is there. And that to me is the quote unquote perfect or dream job. Even as an entrepreneur, I don't love everything that I do in my own business, but the trade-off is all of those other things that make the small sliver of things that I don't enjoy but can't outsource or delegate worthwhile. So if you're job searching, I would love to be your career coach and guide you from A to Z of the job search and take out the guesswork so that you can land a job that actually lights you up. I'll link the website, www.cultivate.com/HHF. It's a 6-month group coaching program. So we can really make sure in 2024, you're making the intentional strides and actions that you need to take in order to land more aligned interviews and offer letters. By the end of the program, you're definitely going to have mastered the job search. You're going to feel confident in knowing who you are, what you offer, and how to present that, not only on paper, online, in interviews, but also how to negotiate your salary and make sure that you're finding a role that is aligned for you. In order to find that dream job, you have to believe that you are a dream candidate. I gotta say, job searching can be so rewarding because it truly is going to make you step out of your comfort zone. It's going to make you confront a lot of beliefs about you, about the world, about hiring practices, and it is challenging. You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Job searching is not easy, especially in today's market. But we have clients every single week who share a success story with us of being able to go from really feeling stuck and confused and sometimes hopeless to landing a dream job offer within a fraction of the time that they did it alone. So It's a program that we've put so much heart and soul and just really built up to make sure that you are not navigating in the dark, but instead feeling really supported and confident and knowledgeable about the way that you present yourself and navigate the job search market. I have a lot of people who share, like, I feel really embarrassed that I am asking for job search support and help. Like, none of my friends or my colleagues seem to need to hire a career coach. So, like, why do I? And I always like to remind people that oftentimes we have our own blind sides and no two journeys are the same. But often when you have a third party perspective, you have an expert to guide you through the process, you can really get to the other side with a lot more ease. And to me, asking for help is such a courageous action. I always think about, the best NBA players out there in the world. They all have coaches. The best authors in the world all have a team of editors, making sure that everything is polished and giving them feedback and advice and suggestions. So this is no different. And truly, we are here to guide and support you through everything because you're not a job search expert. At least I hope not. To me, job searching landscape is constantly changing, especially with all the tools, the strategies, the platforms, technology. As someone who breathes this 40 hours a week is having a hard time keeping up with all of the changes. So yeah, I really hope that you're not a job search expert because you're an expert in so many other things and you periodically have to job search. And I'll just leave you with this, that learning and mastering job search skills is such a valuable skill set because once you learn what you learn inside that you're never taught in college, you're going to just make sure that you always land the most aligned opportunities. Even if you get laid off or you get fired or you voluntarily resign, you're just going to feel like you have so much power and control. And that to me is priceless. So again, check out the show notes or go to www.cultivate.com/HHF to learn more. And finally, if you, again, are not ready to job search, but you really want to gain career clarity, you want to know what to do on this planet. You want to know what titles are right for you. You want to know how to articulate your value and figure out your value and your purpose. Then be sure to check out the Career Clarity Workshop. I'm so excited to go live on May 22nd and May 23rd. So be sure to sign up before then. And that website is www.cultivate.com/clarity workshop. Can't wait to see you inside. And until next time, continue to cultivate your joyful life.